Welcome to another edition of Ian Cameron's Football Frenzy. It's the CFL Week 15 Football Frenzy show. I can't believe the season's going by this quickly. This is pretty light week in the CFL. 3 games, that's it. You're not seeing things. There are legitimately really only 3 games this week in the CFL. 3 teams are on bye weeks here in Week 15: Winnipeg, Saskatchewan, and Edmonton. So we have Toronto, BC on Friday night, and then we have a doubleheader on Saturday. Ottawa, Hamilton. I will be in attendance, of course. Tim Hortons Field. That's your CTV, national TV game of the week. That's now a thing in the CFL every Saturday afternoon, 3 p.m. Eastern. For the rest of the regular season, there will be a CTV game, coast to coast, only on CTV. Don't go looking for those Saturday 3 p.m. games on TSN. I know some people got in trouble doing that shit with Winnipeg, Saskatchewan last week. No, it's only CTV. It's an exclusive CTV only game. So don't go to TSN looking for Ottawa, Hamilton on Saturday. And then Saturday night, the second game of that doubleheader, Montreal and Calgary. So as we always do, by the way, I am on absolute heater right now in the CFL. What an incredible week last week in the CFL, Week 14. The only bet I lost was Saskatchewan +3, and it was a very small bet. I didn't feel comfortable or confident with it, but I figured, revenge spot. Saskatchewan needs to snap this losing streak. Once again, they fall short in agonizing fashion against Winnipeg. It was a big loss for Saskatchewan because they lose the season series as well to the Bombers with that loss. But other than that Saskatchewan loser, everything else came through. I mean, BC, Montreal, over the total, cashed. Ottawa, easily in their destruction against Toronto as Chad Kelly melts down before our very eyes. Nobody got more satisfaction from that than me. Also, Toronto, Ottawa, over cashes. A 3-0 sweep in the Edmonton-Calgary game. We went Edmonton money line. Edmonton team total over 26.5, and also the full game over 50 with Calgary and Edmonton. So it was a heck of a week. Overall, no complaints whatsoever. 6-1 in the CFL last week. It's been a profitable season once again, but the really best results for me have been the last few weeks. So looking forward to keeping it going this week here. Now, there's only 3 games. It's probably a lower volume type of week, but there are a few bets that I like here from the 3 games, and we'll get to that in just a moment. First, as we always do, we'll talk about the teams that are on a bye week heading into Week 15. And of course, we have to start by talking about Winnipeg. I mean, it just continues to be a bit of a resurgence for the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. That bad start to the year is definitely in the rearview mirror now. They put themselves in a position tied with BC for first place in the West Division with a very impressive run that they've been on, of course, of late. 7-6, now above 500. I'm now starting to get just a little bit worried about that Winnipeg team total under that I thought was a shoo-in just a few weeks ago. They better start losing again if I'm going to cash that. But no, you got to give the Bombers credit. What I think has been critical for the Bombers is, well, we know their defense has been great. Their secondary's been great. They've started to get better pass rush up front. The whole defense has played good. I think their secondary's been what's impressed me the most because they've been locking down opposing receivers. It has been extremely difficult. I've said this multiple shows now, but it's true. It has been very difficult for opposing receivers to gain separation against the Winnipeg secondary, and that continues to be something that they continue to play extremely well in that regard. And Zach Collaros, I think, has played some of his best football the last few weeks. I think you could say he didn't play great early in the season. Interceptions, not finishing drives, missing some throws he normally hits on. Well, he's starting to make those throws again, and I think he's played some of his best football the last few weeks. So all the credit goes to Winnipeg, to Mike O'Shea, this veteran team that's kind of turned it around, righted the ship after the slow start. Now, it's still going to be a tough road for them to get back to the Grey Cup because you got to deal with BC. You've got to deal with a resurgent Edmonton team. Saskatchewan, even though they've fallen on hard times with the 6 straight losses, you still have to look at Saskatchewan. I mean, how many of those losses have they been right there with a chance to win and they've fallen just short? I mean, Saskatchewan, their last 4 losses were margins of 3, 1, 2, and 5. They've been right there. Play here, play there. They win those games. So they're still, I think, a football team you have to be weary of. Calgary, forget it. We'll get to them. But the other teams in the West, very, very dangerous. And then, of course, you have to maintain this level of play. But the Bombers have. I think what's been impressive, too, is without Dalton Schoen, they've seen other receivers step up. Wolotarski, Dembski. Ontario Wilson's been pretty solid for them lately for the Bombers as far as the receiving game is concerned. They found other options to withstand the loss of Dalton Schoen. Getting Kenny Lawler back obviously was huge. They've been running the football better with Brady Oliveira too. So, give Winnipeg credit. They have gotten themselves back on track. And now we're in a position where they could win the West Division all over again. Now, again, they have to deal with BC, Saskatchewan, although now they have the season series victory over Saskatchewan, where if they tie Saskatchewan at the end of the regular season, Winnipeg gets it via the tiebreaker. But clearly it's been a nice bounce back for the Winnipeg Blue Bombers, and they go into their bye week feeling pretty good. They will return from the bye week with a game against Edmonton on the road, a resurgent Edmonton Elks team. Great segue into Edmonton, the other team on the bye week. Back-to-back wins over the Calgary Stampeders. The offense looking very good. McLeod Bethel Thompson looking very good. Let's give him credit. He clearly took it personally that he got benched for Trey Ford, and he's played like it since Trey Ford then got injured, and he has played a lot better. He's moved the football. The team's shown explosiveness on offense in the passing game. And more importantly, who knew the Edmonton Elks had the depth at the running back position that they have, and the offensive line? You have to give them a lot of credit, too. They're opening up holes for the run game like I was not expecting Edmonton to be able to do at any point this year. And whether it's Kevin Brown, whether it's Javon Leake, it's been Justin Rankin at times. I mean, they go three deep now at the running back spot between Kevin Brown, Javon Leake, and Justin Rankin. I mean, it's very, very impressive what Edmonton's doing. Jarius Jackson, the OC, now the interim coach as well. He's doing a nice job play calling, keeping the opposing defense off balance, little jet sweep action, little end arounds, little screen passes, a little deep shot down the field, just mixing it up real nice with the play calling and the diversity of the playbook. And it's really keeping teams off balance, especially bad defenses like Calgary off balance. I mean, Edmonton did whatever they wanted offensively against the Calgary Stampeders. But no, this team's on a great run. It's almost like they didn't want the bye week to get here. When you're playing as well as the Edmonton Elks are, and you're on the kind of winning streak that they're on, 5-1 straight up. They've covered 6 straight games, by the way, going into their bye week. 5-1 straight up, 6-0 against the spread in their last 6 games. You almost want to keep playing every week. It's almost like, well, can we not have the bye week this week? Can we play instead? I think that's the kind of feeling you get from Edmonton. Like, we don't want to stop right now. We're playing great. You worry that maybe the bye week disrupts some of their rhythm, some of their momentum a little bit. I'd certainly be a little bit concerned about that. You got to play a surging Winnipeg team, obviously, out of the bye week. But I'm telling you what, I'll say this about that Winnipeg-Edmonton game next week, and we'll talk about it more next week. Even with my concerns, the bye week disrupts the rhythm and the momentum. You're not going to see me betting against a team as a home underdog that's covered 6 straight and won 5 of those games. That's not going to happen. So it's an Edmonton or pass spot for me next week in that Winnipeg-Edmonton game. It's just a question of, will I actually go ahead and take Edmonton and bet Edmonton in that game against the Bombers. And the other team on the bye week, Saskatchewan, they need the bye week. They need the bye week to get right. They haven't played bad. They're a better team than they have than this 5-7 record. I still believe it. Now, I will say this about Corey Mace. You're kind of seeing some of the warts that sometimes you see from a first-year head coach, first-year, first-time CFL head coach. Baffling decision-making, baffling challenges at times. Game management at times has been a little suspect in certain areas in certain games during this skid that the Riders are on, which is now 0-6-1, by the way, for the Riders in their last 7 games. 6 losses and 1 tie in their last 7 games. And, of course, the tie was against Ottawa. But lost to Montreal, Edmonton. The thing with Saskatchewan is, other than the 42-31 loss at home to Edmonton, where they lost by, and even that game was close late in the fourth quarter, these are excruciating losses. This is not a team getting their ass handed to them every week. This is a team that's got a chance to win each and every one of those 6 games that they have lost in the last 7 games, as well as the game where they got the tie with Ottawa. They could have won that game too. 4-point loss at Montreal, the 11-point loss at home to Edmonton when Trey Ford got his first start. And even that game was close. It was a late touchdown run by Edmonton that stretched the lead to double digits late. The tie with Edmonton, 3-point loss at home to Montreal, where Davis Alexander and the Alouettes played great, but Trevor Harris was awesome, and the missed field goals by Brett Lothar, multiple missed field goals, and one of them was returned for a touchdown. That's a game they probably could have and should have won. The 1-point loss at Toronto, that was one where I can say they probably should have lost, because Toronto got stuffed at 3rd and goal on the 1-yard line like three, four times in that game. It was nuts. So they probably didn't deserve to win that game, but yet they're still right there with a chance to win it, only lost by 1. And then a 2-point loss home to Winnipeg, a game they could have won, and a 5-point loss in the Banjo Bowl rematch in Winnipeg last week, another game that was winnable, and they're on the table for Saskatchewan. This is a better football team than the record shows at 5-7-1. Certainly better than the 0-6-1 streak that they're on, losing streak in their last 7. And the good news for Saskatchewan is, you still have Trevor Harris has got to be, I think, more consistency quarter to quarter, game to game. I think you still need to see that from him. The defense the secondary has to improve. I think up front they're okay, but the defense outside of Roland Milligan, I don't love what I'm seeing. I think there's a lot of players that are not covering well down the field, just not doing a good enough job in defending the pass. That secondary is still a big-time concern for me with Saskatchewan moving forward. But here's the good news for Saskatchewan. You're 5-7-1, but you're still at 3rd place in the division right now behind Winnipeg and BC, who are tied for 1st. You still have the slight half-game lead over Edmonton. You're still 1 full game ahead of Calgary. So you're still 3rd in the West. You're still in a playoff spot right now. And you play coming out of your bye week? You play Calgary. And Calgary is now dead last in my power ratings. Dead friggin' last. Lower than Edmonton. Well, certainly lower than Edmonton now. Edmonton's surged up my power ratings. Lower than Hamilton right now, Calgary. That's how much I have soured on Calgary and how much I've been disgusted by Dave Dickinson's team and what I've seen from them the last few weeks. That is a game where if you're Saskatchewan, you're rolling into McMahon Stadium next week coming out of the bye week, you better lay a thumping on that Calgary team. You better damn well believe I'm eyeing Saskatchewan already. And the look-ahead line as Saskatchewan -3 at Calgary next week in Week 16. That's Saskatchewan or pass for me. And that is a ripe situation for the Saskatchewan Roughriders to get back on track, finally at long last, after all these excruciating, painful losses where they lose by just 2 points, lose by 3 points, lose by 5 points. They're right there in every game. Again, this is not a team that's getting whipped every week. This is not a team that's losing by 2 touchdowns or 3 touchdowns every week. This is a team that's lost by 4, 3, 1, 2, 5. Those have been the margins in 4 of the 6 losses for the Saskatchewan Roughriders during that time. 5 of the 6, I should say. And then, of course, they had the tie with Ottawa in there. I mean, a play here, a play there on offense or defense, and they're not on an 0-6. They're not 0-6-1 in their last 7 games. A play here and a play there in some of those games, and you know what? They're at the very least, 2-5, 3-4 in their last 7 games, maybe even 4-3, 5-2 even in their last 7 games. Seriously, play here and a play there. Things are a lot different right now for the Saskatchewan Roughriders. So they got the perfect setup, though, coming out of the bye week. Lick their wounds, get ready, ramp it up, and then beat a team you should beat, Calgary, coming out of your bye week. And then after that, look, you have Ottawa. That won't be easy, but you have them at home. You play at Edmonton. That'll be a big game after that. And then you have a home game against BC. So, it does get tougher after that. That Calgary game's a got-to-have game, period. End of story. That's got to be a W. That's got to be the slump buster next week for the Saskatchewan Roughriders. All right, let's get into week 15, I should say, here in the CFL. Again, just 3 games this week, but we do start with a really interesting game, probably a very good game as well. Toronto Argonauts, BC Lions, BC 4.5-point home favorites, 52.5 the total in this game. I mean, I'm just going to start by stating the obvious here, what I like in this game. Over without even thinking twice about it. This Toronto team's not stopping BC. If we get the Nathan Rourke and the BC offense that we have seen the last 2 weeks against the Ottawa Red Blacks 2 weeks ago, and the BC offense and Nathan Rourke that went into Montreal, defending Grey Cup champions, and just handed it to a terrific Montreal defense. Think about how good that was by Nathan Rourke and BC last week against Montreal, winning outright as underdogs against the champs, handing the Alouettes only their second loss of the season. Think about how impressive that was. 37 points scored by BC. Nathan Rourke with 304 yards through the air, and that's with 3 interceptions. He had 3 picks against Montreal last week, and he still threw for 304 yards, completed 22 of 28 passes. William Stanback destroyed that run defense of Montreal. I mean, I was stunned by it because they're usually pretty good against the run. Not last week, a little bit of revenge for the former Alouette. William Stanback with 128 rushing yards on the ground on 20 carries in the win against Montreal. And boy, when he can run the football effectively, it just opens everything up. It opens up Nathan Rourke down the field to Alex Hollins, Javon Catoy, Justin McGinnis, Keon Hatcher, Aiden Eberhardt, who keeps on having a nice role in this offense now. It's really impressive. It just opens up the passing game. It opens up the threat of Nathan Rourke to run with the football. When William Stanback can run like that, everything's on the table for the BC offense. The play action game, the run fakes, the RPO stuff, the deep vertical shots. Everything in the playbook opens up when the BC Lions offense can successfully run the football the way they did last week against the Montreal Alouettes. And to me, now in the last couple games, the game in Victoria, BC, touchdown Pacific against Ottawa, and the game in Montreal last week, that's the BC offense I think a lot of us expected to see once Nathan Rourke came back into the fold. It took a while. It took Nathan Rourke a while. Get the rust out of his system. He hasn't played in the CFL in years, but he's found it. I mean, these last 2 weeks, the only thing he has to do is he still has to negate some of the interceptions. I mean, he did have 3 last, and that's what makes it even more impressive. The 37-23 win last week. He had 3 interceptions. 3. He threw 3 picks in the game, and they still put up 37 points and over 400 yards of off. No, I beg your pardon. No, it was almost 500 total yards of offense against that usually stout Montreal defense. I can't say enough how impressive that was by Nathan Rourke and BC. Now I'm going to trust this Toronto defense to slow this freight train of an offense from what we've seen the last 2 weeks, 38 and 37 points the last 2 games for BC. We're going to trust this Toronto defense to stop them. Toronto defense that gave up 31 to my Ticats on Labor Day. Toronto defense that gave up 41 and got absolutely carved by Drew Brown and the Red Blacks on Saturday. Good luck with that. And to make matters worse for Toronto, they're slumping right now. They've lost 2 in a row. They lose to the Ticats on Labor Day. They're 0-3 against the spread the last 3 games. They haven't covered in 3 straight, so they've been overvalued. They get absolutely crushed by Ottawa, although it was not just Drew Brown and the 349 through the air. They're shredding that secondary, and that's a huge concern against BC. We know they have the receivers. We know they have the quarterback with the good arm that can shred this secondary that has not been good at all. It's been ass, this Argos secondary. Complete, utter ass. The Toronto pass defense the last 2 weeks. Bo Mitchell's completing bombs against them on Labor Day, too. I mean, just what's happened to that secondary. It's abysmal. I'm telling you, I've said this for weeks on this show. They miss Winton McManus. Winton McManus is one of the best linebackers in the CFL. He's been out for a few games. They miss that guy. He's not coming back for this game against BC. He is a great coverage linebacker as well. He can drop back in pass coverage. He can intercept passes. He reads the eyes of the quarterback. I've seen Winton McManus even. I remember they played Saskatchewan in a touchdown Atlantic game out in Halifax there, my buddy Andrew McGinnis's backyard. And Winton McManus had a pick 6 in that game. Picked off Fajardo, I think it was, back when he was with Saskatchewan. So he is an impact player at the linebacker spot for the Toronto Argos, and he hasn't played in weeks, and it is a big-time loss in that defense for Toronto. But it's not just that. The rest of the secondary has to play better, and Chad Kelly has to play better. Now, here's the thing about Kelly. He moved the ball. Toronto moved the ball against Ottawa's defense last week. They did. But he was also atrocious with ball security, bad decisions, just not making the right reads at the right time. 4 interceptions. You can't win a football game like that, period. If you're a starting quarterback and you're going to throw 4 interceptions in one game, you're not going to give yourself a chance to win. He was absolutely awful in the first half with decision making, and it came back to bite him. Incredible to see not one but 2 pick sixes for the Ottawa Redblacks against Chad Kelly last week in that first half. Both of them by the same guy, too, Damon Webb for the Ottawa Redblacks. So it was an awful first half. You know, he actually moved the ball still. And even on the drives where he did throw the interception, they got down to like the 20-yard line or deep in Ottawa territory. And then there's that momentum killing, just game killing interception that he threw. Now, one of them was tipped. One of them really wasn't his fault, but I think you could say 2 or 3 of those he shouldn't have thrown the football where he did. He also had 463 passing yards, so he was actually lighting it up through the air too, to David Ungerer and to Mackay Polk and to Demonte Coxey, I should say, Kadeem Carey. So, you know, Tommy Neal, who actually played his university football right here in Hamilton at McMaster. So, you know, he spread the ball around well, but you can't have 4 interceptions, can't, and expect to win a game. That being said, they did move the ball. And when you look at the BC Lions defense, which has played better, remember BC's defense, they went through that run where they gave up 33 to Edmonton, 34 to Ottawa. They have Matthew Betts now. This will be his 3rd game back. And you can tell with Matthew Betts. Here's the thing with Matthew Betts being back. We know he's a great player. We know he's an elite pass rusher. We know he makes BC's defense better. But the reason why BC's defense is better with him on the field is not just because of what he does and his production and his ability and his talent. It's also the fact that the opposing offense has to maybe double team him to make sure they keep Matthew Betts off the quarterback. And that's going to open up opportunities for like a Covington or someone else on this BC defensive front to get a sack and get a clean shot at the quarterback. So it's not just that Betts is a hell of a fucking player and pass rusher. It's because he demands more attention, and it's going to open up opportunity for some of these other players, edge rushers and D linemen for BC to get a sack and get a pass rush, like a Jonah Tavai, like I said, Christian Covington, like Sione Tehema. Like, these are guys that can get after the quarterback too for BC. So again, with Matthew Betts back, it's also a situation where just him being a presence on that defensive line in the starting lineup again just opens up opportunities for some of those other BC players to get after the quarterback. So this is definitely an improving defense. But are they going to shut down Toronto for 4 quarters? A Toronto team that's desperate. A Toronto team that is also, though, in a very bad spot. And I hate the Argos as a Ticat fan lifelong. No reason to feel any sympathy or pity for them, and I don't. And I loved seeing Chad Kelly melt down. Suck harder last week is what I said on Twitter for Chad Kelly. His struggles delight the fuck out of me. And I think that's the case for a lot of people that follow the CFL. But I will say this, the CFL did Toronto dirty with the schedule. Not fair. It's not right. It's not fair. And I can't believe I'm saying that, defending the Argos here, but you put Toronto in a situation where Labor Day Monday in Hamilton, short week on a Saturday, 5 days later, you're playing Ottawa on the road, an early start game too, 1 p.m. Eastern. That's brutal. Monday to Saturday, and if that's not bad enough, playing Labor Day Monday in Hamilton, Saturday in Ottawa, you're now playing on another short week, 6 days later on a Friday night, and you got to fly all the way to the west coast of Vancouver to play BC. That's brutal, man. That's just not right for the schedule makers to do that to Toronto. But they have. It's the hand they're dealt, and it's not a very good spot, and it's a team that can't get stops defensively right now. You've got a turnover-prone Chad Kelly. You know what's funny? Chad Kelly now, 3 games back for Toronto? They haven't covered a point spread since Chad Kelly's been back. 1-point win against Saskatchewan, but they didn't cover the closing number. And then, of course, the back-to-back losses straight up in ATS to Hamilton and Ottawa. They haven't covered a point spread since Chad Kelly's been back. And again, Chad Kelly's numbers have not been good. So it's funny that, this Toronto team that we thought everything's going to take off once Chad Kelly comes back. Well, maybe not so much. And again, the numbers here so far, the completion percentage is all right. Certainly the yardage, 1,100, nothing wrong with that. But 4 touchdowns and 6 interceptions. That's the problem. And here's what we're starting to worry about with Chad Kelly. The last time we saw Chad Kelly on the field before his suspension, was the Montreal game in the East Final last year, where once again he was a turnover machine. And so that's 6 interceptions for Chad Kelly in the 3 games he's played this year, which is way too many. You can't win like that. He's got to be better. He's got to have much greater ball security than that, without a question, without a doubt. But the other thing, you have the 6 interceptions from Kelly so far this season. You combine that with what he did in the division final last year against Montreal, where he had the 4 interceptions. That's now 10 interceptions in the last 4 football games that Chad Kelly has started. 10 interceptions in the last 4 football games that Chad Kelly has started. He's becoming a turnover magnet, man. He has become a guy that's just not seeing the defense at all, and it's killing his team. It's killing this team's ability to win games and certainly cover point spreads, because guess what? They're also 0-4 against the number in the last 4 games that Chad Kelly has started for the Toronto Argonauts. Yeah, I don't want Toronto here. But what's kind of keeping me in the lukewarm category about laying it with BC is coming off that kind of a win against the champs. Now you come back home, you're a little bit dopey, you're a little bit flat, a little bit lethargic. Does that creep into BC a little bit here in this spot? If it doesn't, they'll wipe the floor with Toronto. And the one thing I can say about Toronto is they have historically been horrible traveling out west, especially to BC. You go back and look 10, 15, 20 years. The last 10, 15, 20 years, Toronto has been dismal going out to the west coast of Vancouver to play BC. So it's a BC or pass for me from a side perspective. But for me, it's lukewarm. I'm a little bit worried. Maybe they play a little bit down after the way that huge win for them on the road against Montreal, and knowing that I think they've got some big divisional matchups. Well, no, they got Hamilton next week. So it's not a huge look ahead. So maybe it won't be as big of a deal. But when you have a win like that, can you park it and play it just at a high level again? That's going to be the question. But like I said, there's no sugarcoating it. I mean, I'll just give you the results of the last 3 times BC has hosted Toronto. 44-3 BC, 55-8 BC. There was one close game, 26-23 in 2018. But after that, the last 2 games in BC with the Argos going to Vancouver, 55-8 BC, 44-3 BC. Blowout city. BC or pass, but I like this over 52.5. I think BC puts up 30s, maybe even gets into the 40s, but we're gonna get enough, I think, from Toronto and Chad Kelly here as well to get that game up and over the total. All right, we've got Ottawa and Hamilton on Saturday. I just want to this number's going nuts here. I'm just seeing the screen flash like crazy. This was 4.5. This was 4.5 with Ottawa as a road favorite. It went all the way down to 3, and now it's back up to 3.5. So the current number as of this recording is Ottawa 3.5 point road favorites, 50.5 the total in this game. I get I actually, believe it or not, I get the interest in Hamilton. I do. The Ticats are showing signs of life. They're showing a pulse. There's been better play from them the last few weeks. And really, it started in the game against Winnipeg when Chris Jones basically took over as the defensive coordinator. And suddenly this team, which was committing turnovers and like crazy, now all of a sudden they're forcing turnovers. The Hamilton Ticats in recent game. I've been impressed. I mean, all of a sudden they're forcing turnovers. They had a couple of them in the Winnipeg game, which gave them a chance to win. I know they lost 26-23, but heck of an effort on the road against obviously a Winnipeg Blue Bombers team that has been playing their best football the last several weeks, without question. That defense is showing signs of improvement. They still give up some big plays, and there's still times, like even in the Toronto game, second quarter, Toronto sliced and diced them. Second half, I thought Hamilton kind of hanging on in the Labor Day game against the Argos, but they're forcing more turnovers, and at least they're getting some stops. They're still not getting, a boatload of stops, but they're getting some stops, and they're not putting Bo Levi Mitchell and the offense in position where they've got to be letter perfect and score on every drive, which was probably the case earlier in the year when the defense was really that bad. So it's taken at least a little bit of pressure off the offense with the at least somewhat improvement in the play of the defense. And then on the offensive side of the ball, Tim White has gone back to that level that he's getting paid to be as the number one receiver. Stephen Dunbar, Keandre Smith, Shamar Bridges, Greg Bell. Look, there's a lot of people kind of surprised that he's healthy and he's not starting James Butler. And even I'm surprised by that. I have no idea what's going on behind the scenes. I don't buy for a second that it's all injury related. I think this is coach's decision or something's happened. Maybe internally, there's an internal dispute, something going on with Butler. But I wasn't on board initially with Greg Bell. But Greg Bell's playing well. Greg Bell had 78 rushing yards in the win against Toronto, 40 yards receiving. He's getting better each week, and it's probably a situation where, it almost looks like they've settled that Greg Bell's their new running back, their new starting running back. And this probably means James Butler's time here in Hamilton is ticking. The clock is ticking on it, is what I will say. But no, there's definitely positive signs for Hamilton. Back-to-back point spread covers as well. That hasn't happened very often this year for them. Again, they could have won at Winnipeg. They did beat Toronto at home. Let's see how they fare here, though. When second-place team in the East Division, 8-3-1 Ottawa, an Ottawa team that continues to just play great. Phenomenal run, 6-1-1 in their last 8 games straight up. They've just been very impressive on offense. Drew Brown and the Red Blacks offense has been very good, and I believe the former Ticat Jalen Ackland is going to be on the field and ready to go for this game as well, and back in the receiving corps. So you put him with Dominique Rhymes, and you saw Andre Miller step up last week against Toronto. Justin Hardy. I mean, they actually had some injuries at receiver last week, and here's all of a sudden Andre Miller and Justin Hardy and Kalen LeBourne and Anthony Gosselin, and all of a sudden it's like, who the hell are these guys? And they just keep finding receivers to step up, because they were really depleted at receiver last week, the Ottawa Red Blacks, when they beat Toronto. So it's been impressive to see the receiver depth that they've got, without question. Jamal Morrow banged up, but again, Kalen LeBourne took over the running back spot, was good. The defense was opportunistic. Now, the defense does still give up a lot of yards. That's the one thing about Ottawa that I am concerned about. Their defense is definitely better. Barron Miles, give them credit. They've done a much better job on defense this year. This was a horrible defense last year, 2 years ago, Ottawa. And Barron Miles has done a nice job, without a doubt, as far as that fixing that defense as the defensive coordinator. But they still do give up big plays. They still do give up yards and points. What's really helped Ottawa's defense this year and masked some of the numbers and yardage they've given up is forcing turnovers, where that has really saved them. Because if you look at the defensive numbers, total yards, they're fourth. I mean, they're not first. They're not second. They're fourth. They're still giving up yards, but they've been incredible taking the football away. Now, we saw it firsthand against Chad Kelly with the 2 pick sixes last week against Toronto. So the defense has been very good, but I don't know if it's been as great and amazing as people would think, because they've still given up yards. It's really the turnovers that has helped them as far as keeping the points that they allow down on a weekly basis. So very interesting matchup here against Hamilton. You see the Ticats continue 31-28 against Toronto, 26-23 against Winnipeg, 47-22 against Edmonton, 33. I mean, I'm telling you what, in the CFL, I'm not betting unders until I see something change. 7-1 to the over in the last 8 CFL games, and the only under in the last 8 games was Saskatchewan-Winnipeg last week, and it stayed under by a freaking half point. Skin of your teeth to cash the one game that went under the total in the last 8. I mean, right now, defense is bad in the CFL. Certainly subpar. In a lot of cases, though, it's bad. Toronto's defense has been bad lately. Ottawa's defense has been solid, but again, a lot of turnover numbers have enhanced that defense. Hamilton's defense most of the year, bad. Edmonton started the year awful on defense, although they've gotten better lately. Montreal's the one pretty solid defense, and even they got ripped by BC last week. Winnipeg's defense has been really good lately. You could say 1A, 1B, them and Montreal best defense, and everything outside of that's been Calgary, abysmal, horrific, embarrassing on defense, Calgary, and we'll get to them in a moment. Embarrassing defense from Calgary the last few weeks. So there's not a lot of great quality shutdown defense being played across the CFL right now. And that means the games are going over the total. So it's difficult to bet an under right now. And for me, that pretty much applies to this game too, where I think the offenses are very capable of moving the football once again. I'm not involved in this game from a side perspective. I really respect Ottawa and what they've done. I'm a believer more than maybe some, but I also don't want to lay 3.5 coming off last week, and you're going on the road, you're facing a lesser team, and Hamilton has shown signs of life, and maybe now 2-point spread covers for Hamilton in a row. Maybe now is a time where finally there's value, and maybe now there's reasons to back the Ticats in certain spots. And I will say this here: they at home, they got the home win against Toronto. Two of their 3 wins have been at home and against Toronto, and that was a good environment with the home crowd. They're off a bye week with the extra time to prepare as well for this game. We'll see if that comes into play and helps them out. But I understand situationally and from a point spread value standpoint why there's some people out there that think there's some value with Hamilton right now, that they're undervalued and maybe Ottawa a little overvalued, even though they've been very good this season. So, but I'm not doing it. I'm just going to stick to probably a bet, some kind of bet on the over here. And that's pretty much it. More so a game I'll be watching in person as a fan than a big betting opinion there. All right, final game for week 15. And again, just the 3 games this week. Montreal and Calgary on Saturday night. Montreal 5.5-point road favorites, 49.5 the total. This is another over for me with Cal. I mean, it's another over for me in this game because I think Calgary's defense could probably give up 30-40 all by themselves. I mean, this Calgary defense, man, I can't say enough how bad it's been. This is 4 games in a row they've given up 31 or more. 39 to Toronto, 31 to Ottawa, 35 to Edmonton 2 weeks ago at home on Labor Day, and then in the rematch at Commonwealth, 37. And McLeod Bethel-Thompson just shredded the fuck out of this secondary. I don't know what this secondary is doing. It's horrible. They cannot, the ball skills are horrific. They don't locate, they can't stay with receivers down the field. They can't locate the ball in the air. The coverage on the ball and the receiver is abysmal right now for the Calgary Stampeders. And that falls on Dickinson. He's the head coach. But it really does fall on Brent Monson, the defensive coordinator here for Calgary. And I know I hate to say it, he's like my age. I think he was born like 4 days later than me, my age, and he's from Hamilton. He's from Hamilton, believe it or not. I hate ripping the guy. I do. But this is abysmal. This is horrific right now, this defense for the Calgary Stampeders. And you know what's shocking? This team does have talent. They got Rose. They've got Micah Awe. They've got guys that can play. They brought in former Ticat, Julian Hauser, to shore up the pass rush. But this combination of personnel that they've got on defense, it's not working. Mike Rose. I was trying to think. Mike Rose. Yeah, Mike Rose, Micah Awe. There's some players on this defense. It's not working. Clearly, it's not working. This has been the worst defense in the CFL for the last calendar month. I don't think there's any debate there. That's how bad it's been with the Calgary Stampeders. I don't trust them to get stops. Why the fuck would I? Why the fuck should I after what I've seen the last 4 games? Now you've got this Montreal Alouettes team rolling into Calgary, coming off a game that was kind of a, eye-opener for them. Only their second loss of the year, 37-23 at home to the BC Lions. You would think they're going to want to bounce back. And I said, I think last week on the show, and I was on the over. I'm not going to complain too much with BC Montreal, but I should have been on BC plus the points because I said that last week on the show, Montreal is going to have a problem covering point spreads the rest of the season. They're the best team in the CFL record-wise. The odds makers know it. They're going to be power rated like it. Their point spreads are going to reflect it on a week-in, week-out basis. And I'm just worried this is Toronto of last year down the stretch of the regular season all over again, where Montreal is home and cool. They're going to win the East. Not every game down the stretch is going to be balls to the wall effort, balls to the wall focus and intensity. And as a result, there's going to be a lot of spots to bet against an overvalued team playing out the string of a regular season in which they're going to comfortably win the division. And so to me, I don't think you're going to make money with Montreal down the stretch. And so that's my concern here with laying 5.5 on the road with Montreal. Is I do think they're overvalued. I do worry that week to week you're not going to see this team play great, crisp 60 minutes of football, knowing that, hey, we're going to actually. I will say this about the standings, though. You would think they're going to win the East, right? But Ottawa just keeps on winning. Ottawa 8-3-1. They're not totally out of the mix as far as tracking down Montreal for first in the East. But do I think they're going to? Probably not. It's probably still Montreal's division to win, so they can get home field advantage in the East final. But you get my point. I don't think Montreal is going to be a team that's going to be value in the point spread for the rest of the regular season. But maybe this is a spot we can trust Montreal, because look, they got humbled by a team that's got a chance to win the Grey Cup too, just like they do. When BC went in there and just smacked them last week in Montreal against the Alouettes. Maybe that's a wake-up call. And if it's a wake-up call, and if Montreal is even a little bit interested and focused, and they do show that, we got to get that awful taste out of our mouth from that performance against BC, especially from their defense. And even their offense didn't play a great fluid game with Cody Fajardo and company. This could get ugly for Calgary, because Calgary cannot hang, in my opinion, with a Montreal team that brings their A game here. And they very well might against Calgary on Saturday night, knowing the way they played against BC last week. But I'm not willing to bank on that, especially when you play Ottawa the following week on the road, which could be a huge game. I mean, Ottawa's probably going to have to win that to really have a true hope of tracking down Montreal. It's a huge division game on deck. Is there a look ahead? And the fact that, look, Montreal's power rating is through the roof. You're not getting the great point spread value with Montreal. That being said, if I were to play a side in this game, it's Montreal all the way or nothing. I'm not taking Calgary right now. And yeah, Jake Mayer's back at quarterback. Whoop-de-fucking-do. What does that do for me? Jack shit. Jack squat. Because this guy's been miserable, and he deserved to get benched for that game. Now, unfortunately, they benched him for Logan Bonner, who's might be even worse, quite honestly. But, he was bad. Holy fuck, man. 5 interceptions, Logan Bonner, last week against Edmonton in that loss. You have to go back to Jake Mayer. Even Jake Mayer's worst days weren't that atrocious, but he's still another guy with issues with interceptions and ball security and missing wide open receivers. It's the whole gamut over and over again for Jake Mayer. And maybe now he's sat on the bench for 1 week. He was stewing that he wasn't starting the second game against Edmonton of the back-to-back. He's had a chance to see things on the sideline, on the bench from a different perspective. Maybe that lights a fire, and he comes out here even against this great Montreal defense and throws for 350 and 3 touchdowns. Who knows? Maybe he does have that in him, but I have to see it before I believe it. And I'm not taking Calgary here. I'm not that deep. And even if he does play well, that defense is going to step up. That defense, it's been absolutely god awful. Swiss cheese, horrific the last few weeks, giving up 31 4 straight games, 31 or more 4 straight games. No, there's no way I trust Calgary. I'm not rushing to lay it with Montreal. Overvalued. We're playing through the string of the season. They probably know they're going to win the division, and we saw it. That game felt like it meant more to BC last week than it did to Montreal. They came out ready. Montreal did not. And by the way, how many times do I have to see Jason Moss coming out of a bye week with his team looking like shit, especially in the first half? That happened to them against Saskatchewan, too, at home earlier this season. Off a bye week, they came out looking horrific in the first half. That's the game Caleb Evans was starting. He looked awful. And Davis Alexander, who, by the way, watch that interview with me and Davis Alexander if you haven't already. And they looked awful in the first half, and he made the quarterback change, and only that saved him in that Saskatchewan game. Same thing last week against BC. You're off a bye week, and you couldn't have played worse in that. Let me just make sure I get. Yeah, it was the BC game. Yeah, that they were off a bye week. Yeah, off a bye week, and you had a bad first half again. So this has been a Jason. Look, can't criticize him too much, and I've been a big Jason Moss I haven't always been the biggest fan of him as a coach, but you do have to respect the way they played down the stretch. He wins the Grey Cup. Got to give him his props there, but he has been oddly peculiar and very peculiar that he has been really bad off a bye week, especially with his teams off a bye early in the game, first half. It happened against Saskatchewan, and it happened again against BC last week. If he has his team ready this week, they could win by a touchdown or more easily. but will they be is the question. For me, though, still, I want zero to do with Calgary. Nothing to do with this Calgary team right now, or Jake Maier. Jake Maier's going to have to show me that being benched for a game is going to get him going, especially when you're playing a defense that's probably angry coming off a loss like they had against BC. So for me, it's Aline Montreal. I don't know if I'll get there, but I could only look at the Alouettes. This total, Calgary's gone over. The Calgary games have gone over the total in 5 straight games. 50, 64, 60, 55, 53. So all of these games have gone over the total, and they've all been 50 plus. And this total is 49.5. So you know what I'm doing with the total, over or nothing. Now, I am concerned Montreal's defense is in a bad mood. Noel Thorpe, a good defensive coordinator, and they bottle up Jake Maier and the Calgary offense. But I think Montreal offensively can do a number against this just atrocious Calgary defense here in this game if they're on their game. And even though it wasn't their best performance against against BC, Fajardo still did have 240 through the air. And they've still, even with the injuries, and that is concerning for Montreal too, because eventually all these injuries they have at receiver are going to show up. They're still without Tyson Philpott. They're still without Keon Julian Grant. I think Tyler Snead, though, is close to coming back. That is some good news. Austin Mack, they just got him back from the NFL, and he got hurt before the last game in practice. So cluster injuries at receiver, but I think there's still enough there to be able to do damage when you're talking about Charleston Rambo and Reggie White Jr. and Cole Speaker, who's been phenomenal the last few games for Montreal, stepping up at receiver, that they could do damage here against Calgary. So lean Montreal, lean over. I have not bet either one yet. I'm more likely to bet the over than Montreal because, look, Jake Maier could get, the kick in the ass he needs, and maybe does come out here, play a better game and motivated, to put his best foot forward. It won't be easy against a Montreal defense. It's pretty good and coming off one of their worst games of the year. But so I probably will get in on the over. I'm not so sure I'm as likely to get in on Montreal, even though there's zero chance I take Calgary plus 5.5. Zero chance that I take Calgary right now with what I have seen from them. All right, good stuff. That is your Week 15 CFL preview. Hit the like button for everyone watching this show on YouTube. Appreciate it very much. Let's wrap things up with a best bet here for Week 15 in the CFL. Best bets have been good lately, just like the overall CFL run has been for me the last month. It's been a great CFL month. We've really hit our stride. We're rolling on all cylinders. 6-1 CFL card for me last week in the CFL, and we'll look to keep things going here in Week 15. Best bet, let's go to that Friday night game. Toronto, BC, over 52 is at 52 at DraftKings. BC will move the ball against that Toronto team, and Chad Kelly could give points to BC with more interceptions and pick sixes, which he's done a lot lately since he's been back, including the East Final last year, or he could move the ball and score points maybe for his own team for a change. But either way, great chance we see the points fly up on the scoreboard Friday night at BC Place Stadium with two very capable offenses, a very shaky right now Toronto defense, and a BC defense that, look, is definitely improved with Matthew Betts there, but I don't think they're a shutdown defense. They're still going to give up, 20, 21, 24 points in a lot of games. So let's go with Argos Lions over 52. Friday night football, best bet here on Ian Cameron's Football Frenzy for CFL Week 15. Let's talk about the subscriptions. Very important to note as far as the subscriptions with Dub Club. 1 month all sports, $75. Actually, 1 month all sports is down to $50. Okay. Check out Twitter X at Bobano Bets until the end of September to celebrate the new NFL season. 1 month all sports is just $50. Down from the $25 off the regular price now through the end of September. So get on board with that. 3 months all sports, $200. 6 months all sports, $400, and 1 year all sports, $750. Again, dubclub.win/r/Bobano. Looking forward to a profitable NFL and college football week ahead. Profitable in NFL and college football since the beginning of last year. CFL has been a very good season, especially of late. NHL's right around the corner. NBA college basketball. Great time of year to sign up for an all-sports subscription. dubclub.win/r/Bobano. You get the high volume card, every wager there every day. But if you're looking for something a little bit lower volume, $9.95 per month subscription. SoBet, best bets and top plays only. I have to update the all sports streak. That was from a while back, but it's been a good run. Profitable baseball night last night. It's been a really nice run with best bets, top plays at SoBet. $9.95 per month for that. Great stuff. That's this edition of Ian Cameron's Football Frenzy. I'm Ian Cameron. Enjoy CFL Week 15. Enjoy the games and good luck. And we will see you again next week for the CFL Week 16 edition of Bet with Bobano. Sorry, not a Bet with Bobano. Let's get this right. We'll see you next week for the Week 16 edition of Ian Cameron's Football Frenzy.